When you start to lose motivation, you find it again because you're so passionate about the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Beast, for sponsoring Morning Maker Show.
You can't raise money without traction.
I want to introduce you to our new sponsor, Red Bull.
It wouldn't be the Morning Maker Show if Dan didn't make a bad joke.
How did you get even the idea? I love the product. I use the product. But tell us more where the idea came from.
Well, the idea actually came, well, it's a couple of things. So when I was learning to code, you know, when you're learning to code, like one of the things that you make is like a to-do list. So that's partly where it came from, because I was learning kind of in theory how to code, but I needed a project to work on. And a to-do list is a really good way to learn how to work with data and create data, write the data, retrieve it, all that stuff. So I thought I'd make a little to-do list. But of course, Llama Life it's a little different to a to-do list because it has a timer attached to every task, like a countdown timer. And then from a design perspective, it's kind of fun and lighthearted, and it's really designed to help you focus on things, not just make a list, but actually work through that list and get it done. So part of the reason I made it was because I needed to practice what I was learning in theory. But the other reason I made it was because I just really, really wanted a product like that for myself. And I got diagnosed with ADHD about like 10 years ago now, like a very long time ago. And, you know, focus has always been really hard for me, like to actually work through something and not get distracted. And I have tried other products similar to Llama Life, and I've just tried using timers as well. But I kind of needed a little more, and I couldn't quite find something that was exactly like what I wanted. So I was like, well, now I can code. I might as well build it, you know, like I might as well try and build it. And the product is really an extension of myself. Like it's every little feature that goes into Llama Life is something I want and I've needed, and I couldn't find it, or I couldn't find exactly the version of it that I wanted. So it kind of just grew from there. That's kind of the genesis, or the reason why I made it. But the reason it started taking off was actually Twitter. It was actually built in public on Twitter. So that's kind of, yeah, I guess it's why it's such a good fit for this show, because if I wasn't building on Twitter, I don't think it would have got the same kind of traction that it got. And there's a bit of luck in there as well. You know, obviously there's always a bit of luck factored in.
Yeah, that's what they say, but it's usually hard work, and then the luck is such a small part. But I wanted to ask a follow-up on this. How did you know that Llama Life is it? Like, at what point did you think, okay, I can actually go full-time on this? Because you quit your job in 2018, right?
Yeah.
Was it because you knew this is going to be it, or you just wanted to try it?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question, because I always get questions from people going, oh, when did you quit your job, or how did you know when it was right to quit your job? But the thing is, like, there's no right answer to this. It's whatever works for you. And it also depends on your situation, like the context. Like, do you have a family to support? You know, who else is dependent on you? And so for some context, I didn't have anyone dependent on me except my dog. So all the risk I was taking was my own risk, right? And it's very, very different if you have, you know, a family of 5 to support, or a family of 3. Like, there are other people relying on you. So it's much harder to make that decision. For me, and for me, it wasn't like, oh, Llama Life is making this amount of money so I can quit my job. That was not the case at all. It was more, again, kind of an ADHD thing for me, where like I can't do 2 things at once. Like, I'm very, very bad at multitasking. So for me, if I had to do a full-time job and make Llama Life, they would have both suffered, and I wouldn't have been able to put the amount of focus that I needed onto Llama Life. The other thing with me is that I need a certain amount of urgency, and I need huge consequence to happen if to give me that sort of kick that I need to make a product. So for me, I actually just quit my job, and I really didn't have the product wasn't working when I quit my job. I'd already quit my job way before that, way before even learning to code. I quit my job, and I was like, okay, I have, 1 year of savings, and I need to make something happen in that 1 year. And that created like a deadline, that created like consequence and, you know, urgency. And that kind of made me do stuff. So for me, it wasn't that the product was working. It was more just, I need this personally to get going. So I did it. And my circumstance was, I was single at the time, you know, so it's only my risk to take.
Yeah. So would you, in hindsight, would you not recommend, but do you still think this was a good approach? Essentially going all in, because a lot of people, they do things on the side with the job. And then of course there's like a very small percentage that get to the point where the product is so successful that I could say, okay, now I quit my job. But because they still have the job, they lose motivation after a while, and it's very difficult to build something while you have a job. So do you think this is the right approach, just going all in and putting all your might and energy into one thing and making that work? And then if it doesn't, you go back to the job, and then that's it. That's the end of the story.
I think it depends on the person. It depends what they need to get going. And it also depends on what product they're making, because, you know, Llama Life's B2C, and that's really different to B2B.
Oh, yeah.
The sales cycle is a lot shorter with B2C. So, you know, I can ship a new update and someone could buy it straight away. Whereas B2B, there's a much longer sales cycle. And if you're dealing with like large enterprise, there's also security checks that you need to go through. You have to have lots of meetings. You've got to find the right person. Does that person have any influence within the company? Are they the decision maker? What sort of security checks? Like maybe you haven't applied for the right certification. I have friends doing B2B, and there's a very long list of things you have to do. And you might even need to take out insurance, like all sorts of stuff. And by the time you do all that, your product might be dead. So like Sandra's nodding because like, yeah, okay, yeah. There's a whole different thing. So I sort of forgot the question. Was it that, would I recommend this? I think it comes back down to your personal circumstance, what product you're making, what do you need to get going? Do you have savings? Because if you don't, then it's very, very risky. Do you have a mortgage? There's so many different factors, right? And where do you live? Cost of living in somewhere like Bali is much cheaper than living in Australia or the US. So all those things, there's no right answer, but these are the things that you need to think about when you're trying to make that decision. These are the things like you go, okay, well, does this suit me? And that's why I think it's also very dangerous to see stuff on Twitter where people are going, this is the way. That's not correct. Like, what is a way for you? You have to figure it out yourself. Like, you can't just read someone's tweet and go, the way is to go all in. That's not going to work. Like, what about the product you're making? What about your savings? I think people should just take all these factors and make their own decision is the way to go. There's no right decision. It wouldn't be the Morning Maker show if Dan didn't make a bad joke.